The church doors slammed open like somebody kicked in a coffin. Cold wind rushed down the aisle. Candles trembled. Every head snapped around. Clara's fingers locked tighter around Caleb's hand because she knew that walk, slow, confident, like the law belonged to him. A man stepped in with a badge behind him and papers in his hand, and the stranger in front smiled like this was a joke. Then he said it, loud enough for God and the whole town to hear. Clara Wynne, not Mrs. Hart, not Clara Hart, her real name. And in that second Clara realized something terrifying. Red Creek wasn't a safe place anymore. It was a stage. And the man coming for her didn't just want to drag her back, he wanted the whole town to watch. The wind was mean that morning, not regular cold. This was the kind of Wyoming wind that felt personal, like it had beef with you. Red Creek Station was barely a shed and a platform. Two lanterns hung crooked, flickering like they were scared to keep burning. Snow wasn't falling yet, but it was in the air. You could taste it on your tongue. Caleb Hart stood near the edge of the platform, coat collar up, eyes hard. Big man, ranch built, the kind of shoulders made for carrying trouble without complaining. His bay gelding waited behind him, hitched to a post, pawing the frost like it was sick of standing still. Caleb didn't like waiting. He wasn't here for romance. He was here because winter was coming and the Hart Ranch was bleeding. A fence line that wouldn't hold, a foreman down with fever, a land dispute chewing at his borders like coyotes, and a house that had been too silent for too long. Some nights the only thing that answered him was the stove ticking as it cooled. So, yeah, he'd answered a marriage ad. Not because he wanted to, because the ranch didn't care what a man wanted. Practical, simple. It wasn't what he wanted. It was what kept the ranch alive. The train whistle cut through the valley. Steam rolled in like a ghost, metal wheels shrieking against the track. The train slowed, groaning, and stopped with a shudder. People climbed down. A tired family. A salesman with a slick hat. A miner with frost in his beard. Caleb barely saw them. Then he saw her. She stepped off last. Small at first glance but not breakable. A wool coat 2 sizes too big. A scarf wrapped high, hiding half her face. One battered suitcase in her hand, the other hand clenched, like she was holding herself together by force. She scanned the platform like she expected someone to rush her, like the world had teeth. Her eyes landed on Caleb, and instead of relief, fear showed up. Caleb walked forward, boots crunching in the ice. He didn't smile, didn't fidget, just stopped a few feet away and spoke calm as a man who'd watched storms tear roofs off barns. "Miss Abigail Mercer." The woman swallowed. "No, that's not me." One sentence. Final. Caleb blinked once. "What?" She tugged her scarf down just enough to show her face. That's when he saw it. A bruise fading along her jaw, a thin cut on her lower lip, and eyes that looked older than her years. Her voice came low. "I'm not Abigail." Caleb's hand drifted toward his pocket where the letter was folded. The letter he'd paid for. The letter that promised him a wife. "You got off the train meant for Red Creek," he said. "I know where I am," she snapped, then steadied herself like she hated sounding desperate. She drew a breath through the cold. "I'm not the bride you paid for," she said. "But I had to get here before he found her." The wind pushed through the boards. Caleb's gaze swept the platform. He noticed how she kept her back to open space, how her eyes checked corners like they could bite. He lowered his voice. "Where's Abigail? She can't come." Caleb studied her boots, worn thin, soles patched with something that wasn't leather. She wasn't dressed like a thief. She was dressed like a woman who'd been running. "You her sister?" he asked. A pause. "Friend," she said. "Closest thing she's got." Caleb nodded once. "What's your name?" Her chin lifted, stubborn. "Clara." "Clara what?" Another pause, like the last name cost her. "Clara Wynne." Caleb held her gaze. "Why are you here, Clara Wynne?" Her eyes got shiny, but she fought it, like she couldn't afford to fall apart. "Because Abigail was going to die if she came," she whispered. Caleb didn't move. "Who was going to kill her?" Clara leaned in slightly, voice going flat. "The man who thinks he already owns her." Caleb's face went still. "You switched places," he said. Clara nodded. "I told her I'd go," she said fast. "She's sick, she's scared, she can barely breathe some mornings." Her voice cracked. And she's pregnant, and he found out. That hit like a hammer. Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd seen men like that. Men who smiled in church and broke bones at home. Men who called control protection. Caleb looked at Clara again. "Why you?" he asked. Clara's grip tightened on her suitcase. "Because nobody writes my name down," she said. "I'm the one people forget." Caleb stared at her a beat longer than polite. Then he pulled the letter out and unfolded it. Abigail Mercer, 22, God-fearing, strong hands, ready for a new life. He read it once, then folded it back up. Clara flinched, bracing for anger, but Caleb exhaled slowly. And instead of yelling, instead of calling her a con, instead of turning his back and letting the winter swallow her, he said, steady as a nail driven deep, "Good." Clara froze. "What?" Caleb stepped closer, not crowding her, just firm. "Good," he repeated. "I didn't need a doll. I needed a woman who could survive." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You think this is some kind of test?" Caleb shrugged. "On a ranch, you don't get hired with words. You get hired with what you can carry." Clara blinked, thrown by how normal he sounded. "You're not mad." Caleb's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "I'm mad," he said. "But not at you." His eyes flicked toward the tracks. "I'm mad at a world where a woman has to trade her name to stay alive." Clara's throat bobbed. Caleb nodded toward his horse. "Come on." Clara didn't move. "You're not even going to ask what I want," she demanded. Caleb turned back. "What do you want, Clara Wynne?" Her voice came out small, even though she tried to make it tough. "I want to be safe." The wind hissed. The lanterns flickered. Caleb looked at her like he was measuring something deeper than strength. Then he nodded once. "All right," he said. "Here's the deal." One finger. "You don't lie to me." Second. "You work same as any hand." Third. "And you don't let anybody, drag you back where you came from." Clara swallowed. "And what do you want?" Caleb's eyes didn't blink. "I want the ranch to survive the winter," he said. "And I want whoever's hunting her to learn real quick they picked the wrong place." His voice dropped, cold as creek ice. "Let them come. Winter's hard out here. And I'm harder." Clara's breath shook. She didn't know if she'd just found shelter or stepped into something worse, but she nodded. "Fine," she whispered. "Deal." Caleb held out his hand. Not romantic, not sweet. A working man's handshake. Clara hesitated, then took it. Her grip was cold but solid. Caleb took her suitcase like it weighed nothing. "Let's go," he said. Clara followed, scarf snapping in the wind. Then Caleb felt it again, that prickling at the back of his neck. He turned. Down the track, half hidden behind cargo crates, a man stood watching. Hat low, coat dark, still as a post. He didn't wave, didn't call out, just stared like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Caleb's hand tightened on Clara's suitcase. The stranger turned and walked away fast, disappearing behind the buildings. Clara didn't see him, but Caleb did. And right then, Caleb knew this wasn't a mix-up. This was a hunt, and it had just found her. Caleb didn't look back again until they were a mile out. The station vanished behind the pines. Lantern light got swallowed by fog. The road narrowed into ruts of dirt and frost, lined with bare cottonwoods that clicked together like bones. Clara sat stiff in the wagon seat, suitcase wedged between her boots. She kept her scarf up even though it made her breathing sound tight. Every time the wind shifted, her eyes snapped to the tree line. Caleb saw it. He just didn't feed it with words. He drove like a man who knew every rut by name. One hand on the reins, the other resting near his thigh where a revolver sat under his coat. Not for show, not a threat, just there. After a long stretch of silence, Clara finally spoke. "You saw him, didn't you?" Caleb kept his eyes ahead. "Yeah." Her throat bobbed. "Was it him?" Caleb didn't answer right away. "Out here, a wrong guess can get you killed." "I don't know," he said at last. "But someone was watching, and someone walked off fast when I looked back." Clara's fingers dug into the suitcase handle. "That means he followed," she whispered. Caleb's jaw flexed. "That means somebody knows something," he corrected. "And that's plenty." The wagon crested a ridge, and the Hart Ranch opened up below like a hard-earned truth, a wide valley of brown grass under a bruised sky, 2 barns, a windmill leaning a little too far, fence lines stretching until they blurred into the distance, and a house on the rise, big, solid, and alone. Clara stared at it. That's yours, Caleb nodded once. Clara swallowed. Looks like a house that learned not to trust people. Caleb's mouth twitched like he didn't know whether to argue. It's honest, he said. They rolled through the gate. A ranch dog came barreling out, shaggy black brute with a chest like a barrel. He sprinted up barking like he'd been waiting all week to yell at something. Caleb snapped his fingers. Grit. Enough. The dog stopped on a dime, sniffed Clara from a safe distance, then sneezed like she'd offended him. Clara blinked. He hates me already, Caleb shrugged. He hates everyone. You'll fit right in. Clara almost smiled. Almost. They pulled up to the porch. Caleb hopped down, tied the team, then carried Clara's suitcase up the steps without asking. Clara followed more slowly, eyes scanning the yard, the barn corners, the fence line, the open space behind the house. Too much room for someone to appear. Caleb opened the front door. Warmth didn't pour out. Quiet did. The place smelled like coffee grounds and wood smoke and nothing else. No perfume, no laughter, no clutter from a life shared. For half a second Clara thought maybe she could breathe. Then the quiet pressed back. Caleb set the suitcase down. Rooms are upstairs, he said. Small one at the end of the hall. That's yours. Clara looked at him carefully. And yours, Caleb didn't blink. Down here, same as always. Clara hesitated. You're not expecting me to? No. He didn't say it loud. He said it like it was law. Caleb walked to the table and set his hat down. We're gonna be real clear, he said. You're here to work. I'm here to keep the ranch alive. That's the deal, Clara swallowed. People in town won't see it that way. Caleb lifted his eyes. People in town don't feed my cattle. He opened a drawer, pulled out a small notebook and a pencil. Now, he said, start from the beginning. Name, connection, what he's capable of. Clara went still. You said no lies, she murmured. That's right. She stared at the floorboards like they were safer than Caleb's eyes. His name's Silas Crow, she said quietly. Caleb's pencil paused. What is he to Abigail? Clara's voice thinned. He was supposed to marry her. Supposed to, Caleb repeated. Clara nodded once. She never wanted it. Her father did. Silas has land and a temper, and the kind of smile that makes folks think he's charming. Caleb didn't rush her. Clara's fingers twisted in her coat sleeve. When she tried to back out, Clara said, Silas told her she didn't get to change her mind. Not after he'd already announced it. Caleb's jaw tightened. And when he found out she was pregnant, Clara flinched like the word stung. He called her a liar, she whispered. Then he said if the baby wasn't his, her eyes glistened. Then she'd pay for it. The kitchen went still. Even the wind outside sounded like it backed off a little just to listen. Caleb's voice dropped. You got proof? Clara shook her head, almost ashamed. No, he's careful. He only says things like that where nobody'll hear or where people pretend they didn't. Caleb nodded like he'd expected that. Where's Abigail now? With my aunt, Clara said. In Kansas. Hidden. Caleb wrote again, jaw tight. And why'd you take her place? Clara swallowed hard. Because Silas knew the marriage ad was answered, she said. He knew she was trying to leave. He started watching the house, watching the church, watching the road. Clara's eyes lifted to Caleb's. He told her if she ran, he'd hunt her. Caleb's gaze turned hard as iron. And you believed him. Clara let out a dry, bitter breath. I've seen what he does when he feels disrespected. Caleb's eyes flicked to her bruise. What'd he do to you? Clara stiffened. That's not, it's part of it, Caleb said, calm and unmovable. If he's willing to hurt you, he's willing to hurt anyone. So tell me. Clara stared at the stove. He grabbed me outside the church, she said softly. He smiled the whole time, like it was funny. Like I was being dramatic. Her fingers traced the edge of her scarf. He said, you're loyal, that's cute. Then he squeezed right here. She touched her jaw, hard enough to leave a mark. Caleb's face didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. He set the notebook down like it suddenly weighed too much. Clara blinked, trying to understand. That's it, she asked. You're not going to send me back. Caleb shook his head once. I told you the deal, he said. You work, you don't lie, and you don't get dragged back. Clara stared at him like she didn't know what to do with someone standing their ground. Caleb walked to the window, looking out over the yard. "Sela's crow," he muttered. "Never heard the name." Clara's laugh came out dry. "You will." Caleb turned back. "There's rules," he said, "not to control you, to keep you breathing." He held up a finger. "You don't go to town alone. Second, you don't open the door after dark unless you hear my voice. Third, and if you see anything strange, tracks, prints, a rider on the ridge, you tell me. Immediately." Clara nodded fast. "Okay." Caleb paused. "And one more thing." Clara braced. "If anyone asks," Caleb said, "you're Clara Hart." Clara froze. "That's your name." "It's what'll keep tongues from wagging and papers from getting started," Caleb said. Then he added, clean and firm, "We're not filing anything. It's just what we say out loud." Clara exhaled, the tension easing half an inch. "But I'm not playing house," she warned. Caleb's mouth twitched. "Good," he said. "I don't do play." A sound popped outside, wood cracking. Both of them froze. On the porch, Grit started growling low. Not barking, not loud. The kind of growl that meant he smelled something he didn't like. Caleb moved fast. He crossed to the window and shoved the curtain aside just enough to look. Clara's heart punched her ribs. "What is it?" she whispered. Caleb didn't answer. He opened the door and stepped onto the porch, boots quiet. Clara stayed inside, breath stuck, watching his back like it was the only solid thing in the room. Caleb crouched by the porch step. Then he stood slow. His shoulders went rigid. Clara felt her stomach drop. "What?" she demanded, voice shaking now. Caleb turned, eyes locked on her. In his hand was a small object, a strip of fabric, torn clean like it had been ripped off something delicate, white lace, too clean for this place, too deliberate. Caleb's voice came low. "This isn't yours." Clara stared at it. Her blood went cold because she recognized it instantly. It was from Abigail's wedding veil, the one Clara had packed away in Kansas, the one that was supposed to be hidden. Clara's lips parted. "No," she breathed. Caleb's eyes hardened. "Yeah," he said. Then from somewhere beyond the barn a hoarse whinnied, sharp, nervous like it had just caught a scent. Grit's growl deepened. Caleb shoved the lace into his pocket and grabbed the rifle hanging by the door. Clara's hands started shaking. "Caleb," she whispered, barely able to form the words, "he can't be here." Caleb checked the chamber, calm as stone. "Then tell me why his message is on my porch." He stepped into the yard, rifle in hand, scanning the fence line. Clara stayed frozen in the doorway, staring at the open land like it might open up and swallow her. And somewhere out there, hidden in the wide Wyoming silence, someone had just proven the ranch wasn't far enough. By dawn, the lace felt heavier than a rifle. Caleb didn't say much while he saddled up. He moved steady, like steady could hold the world together. Clara stood on the porch, scarf tight, watching the yard like it might move. "Could have been old," she offered, voice thin. "Could have been something blown in." Caleb didn't look up. "Lace don't blow uphill and land on a porch step," he said. "Not like that." He checked the saddle strap again, then finally met her eyes. "We're going to town." Clara's stomach dropped. "No," she said instantly. "That's exactly what he wants." Caleb shook his head. "That's what you think he wants," he said. "What I think is, he wants you scared and stuck, quiet, hidden." Clara's jaw tightened. "I am quiet, I'm not stupid." Caleb's tone stayed calm. "You're not quiet," he said. "You're trapped, there's a difference." Clara swallowed hard. "And what are we doing in town?" she asked. Caleb leaned close enough that only she could hear. "We're gonna see who notices you," he said. "Who watches, who smiles too hard, who asks the wrong questions." Clara stared at him. "You're using me as bait." Caleb didn't flinch. "I'm using town as a net," he corrected. "And I'm not letting you go alone." Grit barked once like he agreed. Clara hated that part of her, felt safer, hated it even more that she wanted to believe in it. Caleb handed her a thicker coat. "And remember," he said, voice lower, "you're Clara Hart." Clara's mouth tightened. Caleb added, clean and firm, just out loud, "That's it." Clara nodded once. "Fine," she whispered. "But if this goes bad," Caleb cut in. "If this goes bad, you stay behind me." That should have made her angry. Instead, it made her chest hurt. They rode out with the wagon, the horses snorting clouds into the cold. The ranch shrank behind them, the open land widened, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling the sky was watching. By the time Red Creek came into view, her palms were damp inside her gloves. Town was one main street, church steeple, general store, a saloon that pretended it was something else, and faces, too many faces, turning like sunflowers toward something new. In a town this small, new faces were entertainment. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop outside the general store. Head down, he murmured. Clara lifted her chin anyway, not because she was brave, because she was tired of being hunted like an animal. They stepped down together. The general store bell jingled as they walked in. Warm air, flour dust, cinnamon in a jar, and the smell of judgment that didn't need heat to spread. Behind the counter, a woman looked up, middle-aged, sharp eyes, apron tied too tight. "Mornin', Caleb," she said, then her gaze slid to Clara. Too quick, too practiced. Caleb's voice was easy. "Mornin', Mrs. Lang." Mrs. Lang didn't smile at Clara. She inspected her. "And who's this?" she asked. Clara felt her throat tighten. Caleb answered smoothly. "My wife," he said. Just a word, just a shield, but it still hit like it meant something. Mrs. Lang's eyebrows climbed. "Well," she said slowly, dragging it out, "that's a surprise." Clara forced her voice to work. "Clara Hart," she said, steady. "Nice to meet you." Mrs. Lang nodded like she didn't believe in niceties. "Where'd you come from, Clara Hart?" Clara opened her mouth. Caleb cut in. "East." Mrs. Lang's eyes narrowed. "Funny," she said. "We ain't heard a whisper." Caleb's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then you've been listenin' to the wrong people." A couple men by the shelves pretended to browse, but their ears were pointed. Then a familiar voice drifted in from the doorway. "Well, look at that." Clara's spine went rigid. A man stepped in like he owned the floorboards. Clean coat, polished boots, hair oiled, smile smooth. Vernon Hale. His eyes landed on Clara and lingered a second too long. "Caleb Hart," he drawled. "You've been busy." Caleb's expression flattened. "Hale." Vernon's smile widened like they were friends. "And you must be the new Mrs. Hart," he said, voice syrupy. "Red Creek's always happy to welcome fresh beginnings." Clara didn't like how he said it. Like fresh meant easy to bruise. "Thank you," she said. Vernon leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was doing her a favor. "You'll want to be careful," he whispered. "Small towns don't love surprises. People start asking questions." Caleb stepped half a foot closer, not touching Clara, just blocking. "They can ask," Caleb said. "I can answer." Vernon's eyes flicked to Caleb, amused. "Of course," he said. "A man with a ranch like yours always has answers." Then his gaze slid back to Clara. "But sometimes," Vernon continued, still smiling, "the wrong answer brings the wrong kind of attention." Caleb's voice dropped. "You threatenin' my wife, Hale?" The room tightened. Vernon lifted his hands like he was innocent. "Threatenin'? No, no," he chuckled. "Just advisin'. Folks get protective of their morals." He tipped his hat at Clara. "Welcome to Red Creek, Mrs. Hart." Then he walked out like he'd just planted a seed. And Clara knew he wouldn't go far. Men like that never did. Caleb turned back to the counter. "Flour, coffee, lamp oil," he said. "And a bolt of canvas." Mrs. Lang's eyes darted to Clara. "You settlin' in out west?" she asked, too sweet. Clara answered before Caleb could. "I'm working," she said, "same as anyone." Mrs. Lang's mouth tightened. "Well, a lady doesn't usually. A lady does what keeps her breathing," Clara cut in. The words came out sharp. Caleb's head tilted slightly, like he hadn't expected fire. Mrs. Lang blinked, then sniffed. "Fine," she muttered, scooping flour. Caleb paid in cash. They headed out. The bell jingled behind them, then so did the whispers. Outside, Clara leaned close to Caleb, voice tight. "You said wife," she whispered. "Not just Clara Hart. You said wife." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I said what shuts mouths," he replied. "That's not what we agreed," Clara said. Caleb's eyes flashed. "We agreed you'd be safe." Clara's throat burned. "Don't turn me into a story you control," she said. Caleb's face hardened, then softened like he hated himself for both. "I'm not tryin' to control you," he said low. "I'm tryin' to keep you alive." They loaded the wagon. Clara started to step up and a woman's voice cut across the street. "Oh my Lord, Clara froze. A small crowd had formed near the church steps, women with shawls, men with hats, eyes hungry. One woman pointed like she'd found a snake in her pantry. "That ain't his wife," she said loud. "Lena's been dead for years." Another man spat into the dirt. "So what is she? Some drifter?" Clara's stomach flipped. Caleb's shoulders went rigid. He started forward. Clara grabbed his sleeve. "Don't," she whispered. "Please." The crowd leaned in like they could smell blood. Then Pastor Grady stepped down from the church steps, Bible tucked under his arm like authority. "Brother Hart," he called, voice carrying. "We don't tolerate impropriety in Red Creek." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Then tolerate my absence," he said coldly. Murmurs rippled. The pastor's eyes slid to Clara. "And who are you, miss?" he asked, sharp. "Truthfully." Clara's heart hammered. Caleb spoke before she could. "She's my wife." Clara's breath caught, because that word was a trap. The pastor's eyebrows lifted. "Married where?" Caleb paused, just long enough for them to smell blood. Vernon Hale's voice drifted from the edge of the crowd, smooth as a knife. "That's what I was wonderin'," he said. "Married where, Caleb?" Caleb's eyes cut to him, furious. Clara felt the ground tilt. If Caleb lied too big, they'd sniff it out. If he told the truth, she'd be exposed. Caleb's mouth opened, and Clara stepped forward, voice steady through shaking bones. "We're married in our own way," she said. "It's not your business." The crowd gasped like she'd slapped the pastor. Pastor Grady's face tightened. "Defiant spirit," he muttered. "Always a bad sign." Caleb's hand moved subtly, protective. "Back off," Caleb warned. Vernon smiled wider. "Oh, now we're threatening church folk," he said. "That's a new look for you, Hart." Clara's ears rang. Too many eyes, too many opinions, too much air. Then she felt it, that prickling, that crawling sense, like being watched from the wrong angle. Clara turned her head slowly. Across the street beside the saloon, a man leaned in the shadow of the awning, hat low, coat dark, still as a post. The same shape Caleb had seen by the crates, but now the light caught his face. And Clara knew him, not because she'd met him, because she'd seen him standing behind Sela's crow at parties, laughing when Sela's laughed, watching when Sela's watched. The man's mouth curved, not a smile, a message. He lifted two fingers and tapped the brim of his hat, a casual greeting, like they were old friends. Clara couldn't breathe. Caleb followed her gaze, eyes narrowing. "Who's that?" he murmured. Clara's lips barely moved. "His man," she whispered. "Sela's doesn't hunt alone." Even the loudest mouths went quiet when they saw him. The stranger stepped off the awning's shadow and started walking toward them through the crowd. People moved without realizing why. Like the air itself told them to part. Caleb's hand slid toward his revolver. Clara's knees went weak. The man stopped a few feet away, close enough for Clara to see the thin scar along his knuckle. He spoke softly, so softly only Clara and Caleb could hear. "Miss Wynne," he said. Clara's blood turned to ice, because he didn't say Mrs. Hart, not even close. Clara couldn't hear the crowd anymore. All she could hear was her blood, rushing, loud panic with a heartbeat. "Miss Wynne," the stranger said again, soft as dust. Caleb didn't move, but his hand settled on Clara's back, light, steady, like he was anchoring her to the earth. The man's eyes flicked to Caleb's hand, then back to Clara. "Relax," he said. "I'm not here to make a scene." Then he added, almost amused, "But Sela's likes an audience." Vernon Hale's smile sharpened at the edge of the crowd. Pastor Grady's mouth tightened like he'd just been handed proof of sin. Clara forced her voice to work. "Who are you?" The stranger tipped his hat an inch. "Name's Colter Briggs," he said. "Most folks just call me Briggs." His eyes stayed calm, too calm. Then he leaned in a fraction and lowered his voice. "Sela's doesn't send me for conversations," he said. Clara's stomach dropped. Caleb's voice came low and blunt. "You're not from Red Creek." Briggs smiled like he'd heard that before. "I pass through," he said. "Like wind." "Like bad luck," Clara swallowed. Briggs's gaze locked on hers. "Sela sends his regards," he said. The words hit like ice water. Caleb's hand tightened on Clara's back. "What does Sela's want?" Caleb asked. Briggs didn't look at Caleb. He looked at Clara like she was the only person in the world that mattered. "He wants what's his," Briggs said. Clara snapped, louder than she meant to. She's not his. Briggs's smile didn't change. Men like Silas don't need truth, he said. They need obedience. Pastor Grady cleared his throat, puffing up with courage borrowed from the crowd. If this woman is not your wife, Brother Hart, he called, then she has lied to this town and lied to God. Briggs's gaze slid to the pastor. Pastor Grady flinched without realizing he did. Briggs turned back to Clara. She didn't lie, Briggs said almost kindly. She just ran. Clara's mouth went dry. Briggs lifted his chin toward Caleb. And you, he said. You're the rancher who thinks he can play hero. Caleb's eyes went flat. I'm not playing anything. Briggs nodded once like he respected that. Good, he said, because this is how it goes. He reached into his coat slow. Not fast enough to be a threat, just slow enough to make everyone watch. Caleb's hand slid toward his revolver. Clara's lungs seized. Briggs pulled out a folded paper, not a gun, a letter. He held it out with 2 fingers like it was dirty. Silas wrote this special, Briggs said, for Miss Wynne. Clara didn't take it. Caleb did. He snatched it and unfolded it, eyes scanning. His jaw tightened with every line. Clara tried to read Caleb's face like it was a map. What does it say? She whispered. Briggs didn't wait. Silas says if you come back quiet there won't be trouble, Briggs said. He smiled. And if you don't, he'll come himself. Caleb folded the letter once tight. You tell Silas, Caleb said evenly, he's not welcome on my land. Briggs gave a small laugh. Your land, he repeated. Man, Winter's got more claim than you do. He leaned closer, voice dropping. You think the law cares about your pride? He asked. Silas has papers, men with badges, men who sign papers. Clara's pulse pounded. Caleb's eyes narrowed. What papers? Caleb said. Briggs's smile widened. A promise, he said. An engagement, a dowry, a father's signature. He shrugged. Silas calls it ownership. Courts call it complicated. Vernon Hale stepped forward, suddenly brave. Well now, Vernon said, fake concern dripping, if there's legal trouble, maybe we should handle this proper. Caleb's head snapped toward him. This ain't your business, Caleb said. Vernon held up his hands. I'm just saying, he insisted. Red Creek don't need scandal. Briggs looked delighted. See, he said to Clara, even your new friends don't want the mess. Clara's eyes burned. Then she took one step forward. Her voice came out steady, surprising even her. I'm not going, she said. Briggs tilted his head. You sure? He asked. Because Silas gets mean when folks say no. Clara's jaw trembled, but she didn't back down. I've watched women disappear behind men's smiles, she said. I've watched towns turn their heads because it's easier. She looked at the pastor, at Vernon, at the hungry faces. I'm not disappearing, she finished. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable. Pastor Grady frowned. This is disorder, he muttered. This is, Caleb cut him off. This is a woman saying no, Caleb said. That shouldn't scare you, unless you're the kind of man who can't stand hearing no. A few men stiffened at that. Vernon's smile faltered. Briggs chuckled softly. Bold, he said, makes the fall louder. Caleb stepped in front of Clara fully now, body like a wall. Get off my street, Caleb said. Briggs held Caleb's gaze. Then he nodded like he'd expected this. All right, he said. I'll go. He tipped his hat like he had manners. Then he leaned around Caleb just enough to speak to Clara, quiet and sharp. Silas wants 2 things, he whispered. His bride and his baby. He paused, enjoying her face changing. And he doesn't care whose body it's in. Clara's vision tunneled. Because the baby wasn't hers, it was Abigail's. Briggs smiled, satisfied. Tell me, he murmured, how far you willing to run for somebody else's child? Caleb moved like lightning. He grabbed Briggs by the coat, yanked him close, voice a low growl. You say her name again, Caleb hissed, and I'll put you in the ground out past my fence line. The crowd gasped. Nobody stepped in. Not for Briggs. Pastor Grady took a step back. Vernon's eyes widened, fear, not outrage. Briggs didn't look scared. He looked pleased. That's the rancher I heard about, Briggs said softly. Caleb shoved him back. Briggs straightened his coat like nothing happened. Then he turned and walked away, slow, calm, like he owned the air. Clara stood frozen. Caleb grabbed her elbow. "We're leaving," he said. They didn't wait for permission. They climbed into the wagon and rolled out with the town watching like it was theater. As they passed the saloon, Clara forced herself not to look back, but she felt it anyway. Briggs's eyes on her, burning a path. The moment they hit the road out of town, Clara's breathing broke. "He knows about Abigail," she choked. "He knows where she is." Caleb's voice went tight. "He's bluffing," he said. Clara shook her head violently. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't have said baby like that. He wouldn't." Her throat closed. "If Silas finds her, he'll kill her," Clara said. Caleb's knuckles went white on the reins. "We'll warn her," he said. "We'll send word." Clara's eyes filled. "How?" she whispered. "Kansas is weeks away. And if he has men, papers, then—" Caleb cut in, voice hard. "Then we move first." Clara stared at him. "What does that mean?" Caleb looked straight ahead, jaw set. "It means we stop pretending this is just a shield." Clara's pulse spiked. Caleb's voice dropped. "If Silas can use engagement and dowry and signatures, then we need something louder than a rumor." Clara's breath caught. "You mean?" Caleb nodded once. "Real," he said, "not for romance, for protection." The word hung in the cold air. "Real marriage, real claim, real risk." Clara swallowed hard. "You said you weren't filing anything," she whispered. Caleb's gaze stayed forward. "I said it to keep you breathin'," he replied, "but he just proved breathin' ain't enough." Clara stared at the road, mind spinning. She'd run to survive. Now survival was demanding a price she wasn't ready to pay. Behind them, Red Creek shrank into the distance. Ahead the ranch waited, wide, lonely, exposed. And somewhere between town and home, Clara realized the worst part. Silas wasn't just chasing her. He was using her to reach Abigail. And Caleb had just offered to tie his name to hers for real, not because of love, because of war. As the wagon rattled over frozen ruts, Clara's hands slowly curled into fists, because if she agreed, she might be signing her life away. And if she didn't, Abigail might already be dead by the time the next letter arrived. The ranch looked different when they got back. Same barns, same fence lines, same wind. But now every shadow felt like it had a reason. Caleb drove the wagon straight into the yard and didn't unhitch right away. He just sat there, reins in hand, staring at nothing. Clara watched his profile, hard jaw, tired eyes. He'd been alone so long, loneliness felt like the rule. Finally, Caleb spoke. "If we do this," he said, "we do it clean." Clara swallowed. "You mean a real marriage?" she whispered. Caleb nodded once. "Not romance," he said. "Not for show, for protection." Clara's stomach twisted. "I don't even know you," she said. Caleb looked at her then, steady and blunt. "You know enough," he replied. "You know I didn't hand you to that man. You know I didn't flinch when he said your name. And you know I'm not asking to own you." Clara's hands tightened in her lap. "I've had men say that," she whispered. "Right before they did." Caleb's face didn't change. "Then don't trust my words," he said. "Trust the paper." He climbed down, went inside, and returned with a worn ledger and a sheet of clean stationery. He set them on the porch table like he was setting down weapons. "I'll write it," he said, "plain. You keep your name if you want it. You keep your money. You keep your choices. And if you ever say you're done," his eyes held hers, "you walk. No chasing, no arguments, no punishment." Clara stared at him. "That's not how marriage works," she said. Caleb's mouth twitched. "It is if the man in it is honest," he said. "And if he ain't, then it ain't marriage, it's prison. Prison." Clara thought of Abigail, sick, pregnant, hidden, and Silas Crow with his pretty smile and empty eyes. Clara's voice came out thin. "If I do this, he'll come harder." Caleb nodded. "Yeah," he said. "He will." Clara looked away, blinking fast. "And what about you?" she asked. "You marry a woman you don't love just to fight another man's war." Caleb's gaze dropped to the porch boards. "I've lived in a house built on what the world thinks I should be," he said. "It was respected, and it was dead inside." Clara's throat tightened. Caleb looked up. "I'm not asking you to love me," he said. "I'm asking you to stand beside me while I do the right thing." Silence stretched. Then Grit barked sharp, focused toward the fence line. Caleb's head snapped up. Clara's blood went cold. "Inside," Caleb said. Clara moved without arguing. Caleb grabbed the rifle by the door and stepped off the porch. Grit sprinted ahead, hackles up. Caleb circled the house slow, scanning the yard. Nothing. No rider. No tracks. Then he saw it. A small stake in the ground by the mailbox post. A scrap of paper pinned to it with a nail. Fresh. Caleb yanked it free and read. His face went still. Clara hovered in the doorway, voice shaking. "What is it?" Caleb turned the paper so she could see. 3 words written in neat black ink, 2 days. Sunday. Clara's knees went weak. "That's church day," she whispered. Caleb folded the note and slid it into his pocket. "It's a deadline," he said. Clara swallowed hard. "He's coming," she whispered. Caleb's eyes hardened. "He's already here," he corrected. That night they didn't sleep much. Caleb sat at the table with the lamp low, writing by steady hand. Not love letters, terms. Clara watched him from the other chair, fingers wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. "You're serious," she said. Caleb didn't look up. "I said clean," he replied. He pushed the paper toward her. Clara read it slowly. "Clara Wynne shall retain all personal property and earnings. Caleb Hart shall not restrict her movement except in immediate danger. Either party may end this agreement without harm, pursuit, or penalty." It wasn't romance. It was respect in ink. Clara's eyes burned. "You'd really let me leave," she whispered. Caleb's voice was rough. "I'd hate it," he admitted. "But I'd let you." Clara swallowed. "And the town?" she asked. "Pastor Grady," Caleb's mouth tightened. "Let them whisper," he said. "They whispered when I was alone too." Clara stared at the paper a long time. Then she looked up. "Sunday," she said quietly. "He picked Sunday on purpose." Caleb nodded. "He wants witnesses," he said. "He wants the town to back him." Clara's voice went steadier. "Then we don't let him control the stage," she said. Caleb's eyes narrowed. "What ray you thinkin'?" "We go to church," Clara said. "Early?" Caleb blinked. Clara held his gaze. "We stand in front of them first," she said. "We say the truth first. And we make it harder for them to pretend they didn't know." Caleb studied her like he was seeing steel under the fear. "You sure?" he asked. Clara nodded once. "Yeah," she whispered. "I'm sure." Caleb set the pen down. "Then we're doing this right," he said. Clara frowned. "How witnesses?" Caleb said. "To who?" Clara asked. Caleb's eyes didn't blink. "People who know what fear looks like," he said. He didn't ask the pastor. He asked the ones who'd seen Silas's kind before. Sunday came fast. The air was sharp enough to cut. The church bell rang like a warning, not an invitation. Red Creek filled the pews early. People came to watch trouble. Caleb and Clara walked in together. Heads turned. Whispers moved like wind through dry grass. Pastor Grady stiffened at the front. Vernon Hale sat 3 rows back, eyes bright with hunger. Caleb led Clara to the front row, not hiding, not asking. When the pastor cleared his throat to begin, Caleb stood. The room went silent. "I'm Caleb Hart," he said, voice steady. "And this is Clara Wynne." A ripple moved through the church. Clara's heart hammered, but she stood. Caleb continued. "People been callin' her a liar, callin' her a drifter, callin' her sin." He lifted his chin. "I'm here to tell you she's under my protection," he said. "And if you've got an issue with that, you take it up with me." Pastor Grady's face tightened. "Brother Hart," Clara stepped forward. "No," she said, voice clear. She could feel her hands shaking. She kept her chin up anyway. "You don't get to use God's name to make fear sound holy," she said. "You don't get to question my worth like it's your job." Gasps, sharp breaths. Clara swallowed and kept going. "There's a man named Silas Crow," she said. "He believes he owns a woman named Abigail Mercer." The name hit the room like a rock. Vernon's smile faltered. Clara's voice didn't. "She's pregnant," Clara said, "and she's hiding because Silas threatened her." Pastor Grady stammered. "Miss Wynne, this is truth," Clara cut in. "And you can either hear it now or pretend you didn't when he shows up at your door." Caleb reached down and took Clara's hand. Not romantic, steady, a signal. Then the church doors opened. A gust of cold air swept through the aisle. Boots hit the wooden floor, slow, confident. Coulter Briggs walked in like he belonged there. Behind him 2 men, one with a badge, one with papers in his hand. The whole church held its breath. Briggs smiled at Clara like they were friends. "Well," he drawled, loud enough for everyone, "ain't this a fine place to settle family business?" The badge man cleared his throat. "Clara Wynne," he called, "on authority of the county, you're to return and answer for deception and interference in an engagement contract." The words didn't belong in a church, but there they were. Murmurs exploded. Pastor Grady looked like he might faint. Caleb stepped forward. "She ain't going anywhere," Caleb said. The badge man lifted the papers. "Engagement contract," he said, "signed by Abigail Mercer's father, witnessed." Briggs's smile widened. "And Silas wants his bride," Briggs said, "and he wants his baby." Clara's stomach flipped, but she didn't look away. Caleb's voice cut through the noise. "Then you tell Silas something for me," he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out their paper. "Not pretty, not fancy, but real enough. We got married yesterday," Caleb said, "in my house, in front of witnesses." The church erupted. "Witnesses?" Pastor Grady barked. Caleb turned his head slightly. Hank Doyle stood up in the back pew, hat in hand. Next to him, Mrs. Lang from the store rose slowly, lips pressed tight. "I witnessed," Hank said. Mrs. Lang lifted her chin. "So did I." The room shifted. Not softened, changed. The badge man hesitated, eyes darting. Briggs's smile twitched. "That ain't a marriage," Briggs said. Caleb's eyes went cold. "It's enough to slow you down," he said. "And long enough for Kansas to hear our warning." Clara stepped forward, voice clear. "And long enough for this town to understand something," she said. She looked at Pastor Grady. "At you," she said. "All of you. If you help Silas Crow take Abigail Mercer," Clara said, "you're not saving morality. You're helping a man who hunts women." The words hung in the church like smoke. Vernon Hale shifted in his seat, suddenly small. Briggs's eyes hardened. "You're bold," he said softly. "Let's see how bold you are when Silas comes." Caleb stepped closer. "Let him come," Caleb said. "Winter's hard out here." His voice dropped. "And I'm harder." Briggs stared at him a beat too long. Then he tipped his hat to the badge man. "We'll be back," Briggs said. He turned and walked out. The cold rushed in behind him like a promise. Clara stood shaking. Caleb's hand stayed steady on hers. Outside, the church bell kept ringing, slow and heavy, like it had switched from calling people in to warning them. Because now Red Creek wasn't just watching a story. Now they were in it. And somewhere out there, Silas Crow was hearing the same message everyone in that church had just heard loud and clear. Clara Wynne was no longer alone. And if he wanted what he thought was his, he'd have to take it from Caleb Hart. If you made it to the end, comment, "Winter's hard out here, and I'm harder." And subscribe, because if you want the next chapter, Silas Crow is finally coming himself.